Welcome, everyone, back to another episode of Men in the Arena with me, your host, Matt, co host, MD, and a special guest today, Deanna Scaldefari. She is a licensed massage and bodywork therapist, and Usai, I'm going to have to ask about this one, Holy Fire Reiki Master, intuitive life coach, and public speaker. So, first and foremost, thank you, Deanna, for your time. Um, I'm going to ask you who is Deanna Scaldefari, but before I do that, I got to imagine everyone that just that listened to me try to pronunciate that.
You s
that
you suey, but yeah, it's okay.
Yusui Holy Fire 3 Ring. All right, we'll get into that at some point. Anyways,
Yes.
who is Deanna Scaldefari?
Well, thank you guys for having me, number 1. Good morning. Thanks for having me here for the opportunity. Who's Deanna Scaldefari? That's a great question. I'll try to give the short answer. I'm a holistic healer. I deal with helping people. Basically, the way I say it is help people feel better in their bodies, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, from all different angles. I'm a huge mind, body, spirit connection person. Massage and Reiki energy healing and coaching are my tools that I use, but the overall intention is to help people just feel better in their lives, and that could be, like I said, physical or mental. People dealing with anxiety, depression, physical, autoimmune, all kinds of things. It's a very wide spectrum. And how I even got here today, and that's a whole, a longer story, obviously. But I do believe, guys, that our personal experiences in our lives shape us. There's no doubt about it, and things that happen to us along the way. And I could not be doing the work that I'm doing today if I haven't gone through, if I hadn't gone through my own personal journey of dealing with a lot of heavy things, to be honest, grief, trauma, narcissistic abuse. But getting to the other side of that, healing for myself, has helped me to now help other people along their journeys as well.
What is narcissistic abuse?
Great question, Mike. The
And
word
why don't we even go?
narcissist,
Like, I was going to ask, what is a nar? Because I feel like that term is thrown around quite a bit, and
I
I'm
was just going to
curious
say.
for your perspective around that. How much of that is actually truth, and people just using that term to label,
Yes.
actions that people don't like.
Yes, exactly, Matt. And that's the thing with social media today as well. Narcissism, narcissistic abuse, it's thrown around. All the terms of narcissism, love bombing, gaslighting, all of these things are thrown around. And honestly, I agree with you. I don't think half the people even know what it means or the extent of it. I actually heard I have 3 teenage boys, and one of them, I overheard him talking about gaslighting. And I was listening to the conversation. And I was like, I don't even think you understand what gaslighting is. And it's actually something serious and scary. So it's not something to joke about. So a narcissist, true narcissist, does have to be diagnosed by a mental health professional. It is a personality disorder. It's a mental health disorder. The problem is most narcissisms are not running to go to psychotherapy to get diagnosed. So that most of them will go undiagnosed. So what I speak to in my world is recognizing the signs, the patterns of behaviors, the red flags, all of those things where you can almost yourself diagnose because, again, it's not something a person who goes to therapy and tries to work on themselves is able to be self reflective and introspective. A narcissist is not able to do that. So, common, just core traits of a true narcissist, because the other thing is that some people can have those behaviors and not actually be a narcissist. This is where it gets a little hairy. But a true narcissist has a lack of empathy. They're not able to put themselves in your shoes. Most human beings, if something's happening in your world, Mike or Matt, I can empathize with you and say, I'm so sorry that's happening. What can I do? What can I do to help? A narcissist is just physically, like in their brain chemistry, not able to do that. They only are concerned with themselves. They can try to fake it, but it typically comes across as ingenuine. Narcissist has a very a superiority complex in the sense that they truly feel that they are better than, that they are, better than all the people around them. They're perfect. Everybody else is the problem. Typically, there is a lot of blame, blame. I call it the blame game, where just if something is going wrong in their world, it's everybody else's fault. It's, their job, it's the boss, it's never theirs because they're perfect in their mind. Um, what else? They have a constant need for validation and constant need for like the ego stroking where they have to constantly be told how great they are. They need to be the center of the attention of a conversation. And again, some of these traits, somebody can not be a narcissist and have some of these little things, but it's when it's constant, when it's all the time, where you can pick out these traits. And then the bottom line is that a narcissist uses control and manipulation to get whatever that it is that they're looking for to get their agenda across. They use people, things, everything around them is it's a chess piece, really. And people, and think about that for a second. Like their relationships are not true relationships. It's like, what can I get from you? How can I use you, Mike, to get my agenda across? And the thing is, this is where I speak to a lot about the feelings of it. I could go down many different rabbit holes, but most people, if they feel used, if you feel like you're being used and something doesn't feel right, it doesn't feel good. And the narcissist at the end of the day, they only care about them. It's their survival or no, or that's it. So I don't know if that helps a little bit. And again, I could go on and on and on, but those are like the top traits.
Yeah, no, and hey, it's the traits that you mentioned. I can see how easily those behaviors can just be exhibited by an everyday human that maybe wouldn't necessarily be diagnosed
Right.
um, clinically with narcissism. And my mind is going to and wondering more about like what I'm hearing a lot of is a really, really deep, wounded desire for recognition, or also just a deep sense of like needing to feel worthy in the world. I'm just
Yes.
curious, like, what are they suffering from, or like, what are they trying, like, below this narcissistic label? Um, yeah, what are they suffering from?
Yeah, that's a great question, and that goes deeper. So it's the whole idea of if you've heard the saying hurt people." And so a narcissist actually they have very very deep insecurities about themselves, but they mask it and they cover it with this facade of that they're wonderful and perfect and everything is great. So really, they're very broken people inside from whatever reason, whether their own childhood and upbringing or if they've been exposed to some sort of trauma, but they're trying to mask that. So the thing is, and this is something that's happened in my own world, it's not that they're just telling people, "Oh, I'm really great at this and I do this." They actually believe it. There's a piece of delusion there. It's that they have to almost trick themselves of whatever stories they're portraying because they have to believe it to mask that insecurity inside. And sticking with that insecurity for a second, they actually then, and a lot of this is subconscious, a lot of it is intentional. It's just learned, a lot of it is learned behavior, excuse me, if they grew up with a narcissistic parent, that's typically how it will work. That they feed off other people's insecurities. So for example, if I'm talking with you guys and I want to use one of you or both of you to get something done in my life. I have an agenda. There's always an agenda and there's always a motive. And it's always about control and manipulating the situation. So I would literally have a conversation and hone in on what your vulnerabilities are. What are your insecurities? And I'm going to play to that. And that's typically how they use it. They need information. They need to know, almost like, when people say, "Oh, what my buttons are, always pushing my buttons, pushing my buttons." They need to know that because that's what they can then use to manipulate. But it comes from they know it well because they have their own very very deep insecurities. And a narcissist, number one fear, really their true fear in their life is abandonment. And so that's why again when they use people in situations, if the person figures them out and leaves, whether it's a friendship or a relationship, and leaves them, that's their biggest, it's actually called narcissistic injury. There's all kinds of terminology, but that's their biggest fear is to be abandoned. And a lot of times it does track back to childhood.
I guess, can you share a little more, like, just with your personal story, maybe just some of the different things that you saw, in your different relationships that maybe, like, kinda, like, were like, "Oh, wait, something's not right here," and then maybe how you felt like, I almost get the sense that you probably knew something wasn't right, but there was also something that was keeping you there. So, like, what is that,
Mhm.
like, internal battle going on within you? And maybe just speak a little bit more to your personal story.
Yeah, you guys are asking great questions. Those are really like the red flags that what you're talking about, Matt, as far as right, like what things can you notice? And again, I'll speak to the fact that they're patterns. One everyone can have a bad day. Everyone can have, one-off situation, but it's when you consistently see a pattern of behavior with someone that's, unhealthy. It's that's where it starts to say, okay, this isn't just a bad day. This is what this person normally does. Speaking to my own personal story, yes, I've been in several different narcissistic relationships, and for me, it tracks back to my dad. My dad had a lot of those traits, and I'm assuming from his childhood. I didn't know my grandparents. And typically, the narcissist connects with, it's almost like a magnetic connection between a narcissist and a codependent, a narcissist, an empath, narcissist, a people pleaser. Those are typically the combinations. Why? Because from the narcissist perspective, it's someone they could easily control. Um, and so most of my
Does that
childhood, I watched.
so really
Oh,
quickly,
sorry. Go ahead.
is that normally happening on a is that a conscious thing that they're doing, or is that all subconscious in terms of like who they're looking at, like, trying to
Yeah.
be involved with?
That's a great question. I believe it's both, honestly. It's on some level, there is a conscious piece of like, oh, this person is, again, someone who's a people pleaser wanting to make everyone happy or a fixer, a doer, right? They're like, oh, this person's someone that I can use because they're gonna want to fix me. They're gonna want to help. They're not gonna leave the relationship easily, right? But then I think there is a subconscious piece as well. It's just a lot of the behavior is just so ingrained in them that they don't really even think about it because there were many situations in one of the longest narcissistic relationships I was in. There were many situations where where the person would say something and I'm like, I don't even think that way. Like the fact that you even thought of that, like it was just almost like this evil component, and it's hard to explain. But there were many, and this relationship lasted 20 years, so there were many times along the way um, that something didn't feel right. And so that's what I speak to a lot about, like connecting to yourself and like how you feel when you're around someone. Because I did not know about narcissism. I didn't know anything about what I know now, but I knew that in many situations when things would blow up or a situation, it didn't feel right. It didn't feel good inside of me because it was like something's wrong here, but I just didn't know what, and I couldn't put my finger on it. So that's kind of where, coming full circle, where I come to this space of trying to raise awareness really for most people, because most people in this world will come across a narcissist in their life, if not more. And again, I can speak to my own personal situation. I've had several narcissistic bosses, coworkers, in romantic relationships, friendships. So it's in all facets of your world. And when you start to pick out those behaviors, it's almost like, when you see something and you can't unsee it, that's kind of the situation. Because now I kind of joke a little bit that I have the radar because I'll go somewhere and I can start picking out those behaviors much earlier, much sooner than I spent years in a relationship that I didn't even understand what was happening.
Yeah, and I guess for me, the obvious question for my visual learners out there are like understanding the traits and maybe like the yellow light goes off, but like what are some of those behaviors, like tangible examples, interactions at a restaurant or like walking on the street or um, a deep discussion in the kitchen, right? Like
Right.
what are some of your lived examples across the
Yeah.
various different relationships you'd mentioned where, maybe if that instance happens, it's not an automatic like, oh my goodness, we're diagnosing you, but
Right.
that like we can start to stack some like real tangible examples and then see if there's a pattern that persists.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, and the thing is there are a lot of little things where again, most people will try to give someone the benefit of the doubt and justify, oh, that's not a big deal. But when you really start paying attention, there's small details. Let's say you're at a restaurant having dinner. How the person treats the server, right, is a really good indicator, right? Talking down to them, kind of like degrading them, almost, treating them like a servant type of thing. That's one thing. How they treat their family members, their friends around them. Those are big things that you should really hone in on. Oftentimes, like you said, like around or the kitchen table, it's the nitpicking, the belittling. There's a lot of degrading. Again, so what I started with to say, like one of the traits of a narcissist is that they're superior. Well, that comes across on a daily basis in all these little comments. It's the whole idea of like death by a thousand cuts. So it's like, "Oh, you're gonna eat that? Oh, I didn't think that you should if, you're watching your weight," or, "Oh, you cooked this, but it's almost perfect, but it doesn't taste so great." Oh, and it's all these little, like, belittling comments. Many, many times I felt like I was being shamed like I was a child, and that was in several of the relationships: boss, coworker, romantic relationships. That's one. The other one is another big red flag is if you see someone switch, it's like flipping the switch on off of a light. If you see someone's behavior or their character flip like that switch, like where everything's fine, we're fine now, we're out doing whatever the case is, and everything's fine, and then something happens. Maybe you say something that they didn't like. It's like a flip of the switch, and there's like anger, rage. Oftentimes, this is what you'll see, and it's like, whoa, where did that just come from? Like we were just having a good time and everything was fine. But you said something that they didn't like, and it triggered something inside of them. So and that happened many times in my world where I was like, wait a minute, we were just good. Like, what the heck happened? So when that happens many times over time, there's many phrases with dealing with in a narcissistic relationship. And one is walking on eggshells, and so this is again recognizing, guys, that this happens subtly over a long period of time, so you don't notice it. So when that happens, where you're like, "Whoa, we were just good, and what just happened?" Slowly over time, you start to learn, I better be careful here. I better not say this. That's going to make them upset. Oh, I better not do this because he doesn't like when I do this. So it starts to then change who you are in a bigger picture, because you're trying to walk around this person, like not trying to upset them because, oh, and that happened so many times in my world in that longer relationship where I know he's not going to like that, and I don't want to have a big blowout and war about it. So I'll just going to sneak around the side and try to do this quietly. And so you start to almost change your life and change the way that you do things. You lose your voice, you don't speak up, you don't give your opinion because you know that it's going to be met with resistance or anger. So you start to just be quiet.
I guess like as you reflect back, like who was Deanna before these different relationships in terms of just how you showed up in the world, how you viewed yourself relative to maybe at your rock bottom in one of these relationships? Like, how did you show up? What were your thoughts about yourself? Like, just take us, and then maybe today, like how it's evolved over time.
Yeah, these are great questions. The Deanna that was born into this world was just always positive and happy. I've always been a silver lining kind of gal, just always looked for the good in people, in situations. That's always just been who I am, who I was. Throughout some of these relationships, and especially the longer relationship, it was almost like that joy, that positivity was like beaten out of me. Now, I will say that I wasn't physically abused, but emotionally, verbally, psychologically, sexually abused. And so at some point, it was like my rock bottom was when I realized I had nothing more inside of me. I talk about light, especially now in the world of people and how I help people. I believe we all have a light in this world, and we're all meant to share it, and we're meant to shine, and we're meant to be our best selves and share our gifts with the world. That light inside of me was so dim that it's hard to even go back to that time because it was just such a very dark, dark time in my life. And I realized, again, not even understanding narcissism at that time, was that I can't stay here. This is going to kill me in some way, shape, or form. Like, I cannot stay here. I looked in the mirror and I'm like, I'm not the person I know that I am. It was stripped, almost like my personality, my light was stripped away from me. So then I'll fast forward, leaving that relationship. And now it's been over 7 years in my healing journey, and I've been very intentional of the things that I've done so much inner work on myself. I've seen it happen. It was like my light was coming back. It was like it kept shining brighter and brighter and brighter. And I use that analogy just to explain that people around me, my family and friends, are like, Deanna, like you're you'd say a different person, but really I say I went back to who I am at my core. So yes, I'm different. I say like newly updated type of thing, but it's really I was taking back who I was that was really taken from me. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, yeah. Was just trying to get a better sense of really the relationship with yourself and,
Yeah.
and how that's evolved over time. I guess what are there any are there any particular like what causes narcissism? I think we've talked about it a little bit, but like are there any like different experiences in particular that tend to lead to narcissistic tendencies? Is there a difference between narcissistic tendencies and someone that's quote unquote diagnosed with being a narcissist,
Yes.
if you will?
Yes.
Because
Yes.
I guess I'm having a little bit trouble, like to your point earlier of it has to be formally diagnosed, but I can't imagine there's many, if any, narcissists that are going to go in to get formally diagnosed. So, like, I
Right.
guess like seems a little bit of a catch-22. So, I guess I'm just curious
Well,
for your thoughts there.
and just to
Right.
like kind of add on to that a little bit, because so much of what you're describing, I think I just be like, this person's a dick. Like, like they suck to be around.
I don't want to be
And
around them.
so
Exactly.
like, I guess what's the tipping point where you're like, this is a clinical like
Yeah.
diagnosis? Like,
Right.
what's that line between
Yeah.
that versus like this person's just an a-hole? Like, what's
Right.
the
Right. You're funny, Mike. I'm going to answer that in a second. I do just want to just say one other point of what your last question was, Matt, on the, feeling that, the darkest day type of thing in that broken down state. Typically, the damage, the trail of damage that's left behind as far as for the person, the victim of narcissistic abuse is it's like your self it affects all the things of you, your self-esteem, your value, your self feelings of self-worth, self-love. So there's this whole piece that yes, this person did all of these things, but it truly affects you inside as a person of your confidence, how you even portray yourself. So even sometimes questioning your own sanity, like this person made me believe that I was X, Y, and Z, but this happened to me many times where I'm like, no, that's actually not who I am. But I was kept being told that. And so now again, it's kind of like with children. Like when you tell a child growing up, like, oh, you're not smart, or oh, you're good at this, or oh, you're not good at this, they believe it, right? They grow up believing that. And it's the same kind of thing. It's a slow, steady brainwashing or rewiring. So when you leave the relationship, it's not just trying to understand what happened in the relationship. It's a total breakdown of yourself. So I just wanted to clarify that on the self-esteem and the self-worth part. And that's kind of a lot of what I help people with in rebuilding that. But to answer your question about yeah, how do you distinguish between is this person an actual narcissist or are they just a jerk? Um, okay, so there's a couple different routes I can go. One, I will say yes. Typically, they're not running to therapy, or if they are, again, in my situation, I kind of force the issue to go to therapy, to go to couples therapy, and they can sit there and say all the right things, but they're not actually doing the work. Typically, what happens, and this is what happened in my situation, is where I started going to therapy, and it's almost like this person was diagnosed through me, meaning I was talking about all the relationship and all the things that were going on. And then my therapist and I piecing all of these things together, recognized she diagnosed that, yes. And there's clinical piece, there's covert, overt, there's malignant, there's all different types. So she diagnosed the narcissist that I was with. So a lot of times that is what happens, one. And two, this is something that again there's several different ways a narcissist becomes a narcissist. One can be that they were just exposed to a traumatic event, whether in childhood or even as young adult. That's one. But what I find more and more typically in the people around me that I help is that it's generational, in the sense that if you grew up with one of your parents was a narcissist, you're in that environment. So you're either the children of a narcissist will typically go one of two ways. They either repeat the patterns, or they go the complete opposite direction. And it's like those are the black sheep. You hear people talk about like, oh, the black sheep of the family. Typically, they're trying to leave, to self-preserve, to get away from this kind of toxic behavior. That I see that often. Um, so yeah, so I'll speak personally in my situation, my parents. I don't I believe that my dad had narcissistic traits. He had a lot of the behaviors, but I don't believe that he was a true narcissist, and I'll tell you why. He had a good heart. He was a generous, caring, loving person. And if you're a narcissist, I'm sorry to say, like you can pretend you are that, but you're just not. Like in your heart of hearts, you have ill intention towards anyone around you. And my dad didn't. He was genuinely caring and loving and generous. So I believe he had a lot of the traits that he learned from one of his parents. So I think the biggest way that you can distinguish is, we all have our deepest, darkest place of us. It's that, like when you say people, oh, he's a heart of gold, or oh, she at heart, really have to get to the root of somebody. If you really feel like someone is genuine and caring and loving and they have some of these things, it could have just been learned behavior. Children learn by watching their parents and what's modeled to them. I'll speak of my children then. I'll go personal there in that sense. I started recognizing that my children were picking up on some of these traits and were doing the same kinds of behaviors. And it's like, okay, wait a minute. So this is where I'm saying to be observant and to track the patterns of behavior. Narcissists we're all individuals, so everyone's different and everyone's story is different. However, if you track the behavior, it's almost scripted. It's almost like you're reading it from a book because they're predictable. And if you start to notice it, you're just going to see it happen over and over and over again. So, um, I don't know if that answers your questions. A lot of it is really situational when you're in a situation. But I would say, like, let's say if you met someone new, you met a new friend, okay? We meet new people all the time, new jobs, new situations. Again, starting a relationship or friendship with somebody, you think they're great. Oh, this person's really nice. And then there was like one comment they said that seemed a little off. And you're like, that was kind of weird. Okay. And then another time you go out and they did something and you're like, that was strange. Okay. So you start to, like you said, I like Mike about stacking those experiences. It's like you're taking mental notes. You're taking notes. You're like, okay, all right, well, I'm going to let this unfold, but start paying attention to those things because that's where typically when they start stacking and you realize these are patterns, it's not just a one off. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, I mean it's just helpful insight, I think, and it was Matt's question. But
Oh, sorry, that was
yeah,
bad.
no, I'm just chiming in, but so Matt, you tell me if but I guess my question, I have like one kind of off the cuff, and then I would love to transition towards the healing
Yeah,
aspect of it in your practice and how you work with individuals,
sure.
because there are a variety of modalities that we can touch on briefly.
Right.
I'm wondering though, just one last thing to stick on the narcissist is if what their healing journey might look like, and does it start with like a gradual self-awareness? And I'm just wondering if there's like a self-aware narcissist who's like, oh yeah, this is just, like they'll still portray a certain tendency or trait or behavior, and they might like jokingly say it, but like maybe some truth to the joke, which is like, oh, yeah, this is just me like being a narcissist, or like, what is that? Um, I guess what does that phase of healing look like for the narcissist if, in a positive story in which they heal?
Yeah. Sadly, sadly, Mike. There's statistics on it, and Dr. Ramani is like an expert in the field, and she talks a lot about this. Sadly, most narcissists aren't. They don't heal. They're not able to heal. I'd say, like, I've heard that 99% of narcissists are never going to change, and the reason being is because in order to change or fix something or heal from something, you have to be self-aware. You have to be self-reflective to say, okay, this is something that I learned in childhood, but I don't really want to do that behavior anymore. So how do I change it? They are not physically in their brain capable to do that. There is a brain chemistry piece. The talking about the generational pieces of that, like if you learn from your parent, from your parent, from your parent, it starts to change the chemistry in the brain. And there is science behind it to back that up. It's the same with an empath. So I consider myself an empath. I didn't know that most of my life, where I'm the opposite of a narcissist, super empathic, super intuitive, and caring of people. That also tracks generationally and through the brain chemistry. It's about the neuroreceptors in the brain. A narcissist lacks those neuroreceptors, and an empath has more of them. So there's science behind it in the chemistry. So sadly, I wish that I could say, yeah, if a narcissist really wanted to change, they could, because I want to believe that anybody can make changes in their life, but they lack the pieces and the components to be able to do that. So
Can I ask
sadly,
something real quickly though
yeah,
on that? Because
yeah,
I feel like a lot of people, myself included, maybe at the tempo lack the awareness, but hit rock bottom, where the to change. That's normally what inspires a lot of change.
yes,
where the pain of doing the same is just greater than the fear of the unknown and change. And so
Sure.
for those that do recover from narcissistic, from being a narcissist, if you will, or do make change, like what does a rock bottom for a narcissist typically look like? Like what is something that, like, just examples of what happens to them where they do just feel like, man, I have to make a change.
Okay, I'll speak from my personal experience there. Again, I'm I've said I'm a positive person, so this is a hard one for me to say that sadly, at least in all of my experience and the people that I work with and the people around me, a narcissist typically does not change. They just keep repeating the same patterns over and over and over again. And I'll speak to my experience. A narcissist, like I said, biggest fear is abandonment. So if you leave a narcissistic relationship, if you're the one to leave, because typically the narcissist discards you, it's all about their control. They're done with you. They're going to be cheating on you. Then they're going to get rid of you. You're not stroking their ego enough, whatever the case is. Typically the narcissist will discard the person. But if you, which is what happened in my situation, I figured out the truth of all that was happening and I left the relationship. That's the biggest fear of a narcissist is being abandoned. And that you would think, right? Now you talked about rock bottom. In someone's life, you'd say, oh my gosh, I was with this person for so long, they just left. That would be rock bottom. And I had that hope. I had that hope that this is going to make this person make some real changes. And sadly, it went the exact opposite way. The person got even worse with their behaviors. It was this vengeance, this vindictiveness that can only be described as evil and cruel because it's actually like shocking to me because I was praying that that would be the case, that maybe this is the rock bottom, the wake up call this person needs to make some real changes, and it went the other route. And it's really sad. And I've seen that again. I've personally experienced that, and I've seen that in other situations too. So it
Yeah.
kind of makes you
Mm.
question humanity on a deep level. It really does, because I want to believe that everybody's inherently good. Um, and I don't want to say that narcissists are bad people. I just think that they've been hurt themselves and they don't know how to change.
Yeah, I think those major events, like ending a relationship, it provides a crossroad or like a
Yeah.
fork in the road rather that they then decide to either dig their heels in
Yeah.
or to say this was so painful and the way I'm living right now is so exhausting that um and I think for we've touched on our rock bottoms throughout the course of our podcast, Matt and I, and I think like
Hmm.
part of it was just like the way we were living was somewhat exhausting, or like what we were pursuing just was exhaustive, and it felt
Hmm.
like there was no end on this like that road. And so at some point, to each our own, like we took our own pivots and decided to
Right.
pursue a different direction. And it sounds
Right.
like until the person is totally worn down and maybe has felt that they've lost time and time again over time, like that probably is what needs to happen. But like to your point, what they're struggling with and how they're showing up in the world coincides with what the blockers would be to get help.
Yes. Yes.
Like the
Exactly.
ego, it sounds like the ego has this like death grip on the person essentially,
Yes.
and it'll never allow them to be the level of vulnerable and aware, and self-reflective and introspective and all the things that you probably need to go through to then get
Yes.
on the healing journey. So I can see
Yes.
how it coils into compounds into a more negative cycle, and I can also see why it's so rare for a narcissist to actually get help,
Yeah.
versus somebody who's maybe depressed with other reasons who, actually might
Yes.
want help and maybe is already vulnerable.
Right.
Um,
But Mike,
so
can
let's,
I say can
yeah,
I say something there though? Just
please.
because you're absolutely right, and that's what I speak to a lot. I speak to healthy versus unhealthy relationships, and you're right. In a normal situation, most people hit rock bottom, and they're like, "Oh, this is a wake up call. I got to make some real changes." Right? Whatever I'm doing in my life is not working, and I see that a lot in my work too. And that's a good thing. That's a healthy thing. Like, okay, I'm going to make some changes and try to be. I believe that we should be every day striving to be a better version of ourselves that we were yesterday. However, because the narcissist lacks that self reflective piece, not only does it not happen, typically what happens is they leave whatever the relationship is, right? And they just start over. And that's why I'm saying it's a cycle, it's a script because they'll either get rid of a person, romantic relationship, or that person leaves them. And then they find it's called their supply, a narcissistic supply, which is a person, which again, some of this terminology is really like heavy, and they'll find someone else and they start the entire cycle all over again. The love bombing. There's certain phases of like to get to groom their victim and bring them in. And they just keep repeating it and repeating it and repeating it. So they are not the ones seeking help. They're just like, oh, this person, right? There was something wrong with this person. And then they just move on and just repeat the cycle.
And so clearly it seems that you've taken this experience or multiple experiences in your life, you've turned it into purpose and into practice. Curious if like or what you were up to and what you were pursuing or aspiring and what you thought you were going to maybe be involved in and um just that's just a personal like I'm just curious like what you
Yeah.
initially maybe thought you were going to be and do for work and whatnot and then at some point you decided to pivot your pain into purpose and into practice and would love to learn more about that part of you and what you do every day.
Sure. You sure. Thank you. I said before, I believe our personal experiences shape us in many ways. And a lot of times we don't realize it until after the fact. We look back in hindsight and say, oh, wow, this was all connected. So I was already on track. I'm a massage therapist by trade, and it was a second career for me. So years ago, I worked in corporate environment, and then I had my kids, and I was home with my kids, and it was time to go back to work. I went back to school. So I went to massage school and became a therapist, which immediately resonated with me. It was like, this is what I'm definitely meant to do. I loved it immediately and loved helping people that way. Through the massage journey, that led me into energy healing, and Reiki is a form of energy healing. Again, didn't even plan on that, but that's kind of how it evolved because I was just entered into this world of like, again, helping people with their body, but there's so much more to us than just our physical body. It was at that point of, yeah, I was already into learning into Reiki where I'd left that longer narcissistic relationship, and it was my own personal rock bottom, darkest place. And I was trying to survive for myself and for my children, and that was my main intention. So my focus on my personal healing was for me, of course, and to help myself and to help my family. I had no concept at the time that my healing was directly related to helping so many other people in the future. I can look back now and see that. So I was very, horse with blinders on. I was very focused on like, I need to get, my thought was, I need to get as far away from this dark, dark place that I possibly can. And so I've done a ton of, like I said, inner work, psychotherapy, energy work, all kinds of different modalities to, retraining of the brain. Again, the science side, the neuroplasticity. A lot of people say, oh, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. Well, you actually can. You can rewire your brain. Lots of people use that as an excuse, like, oh, that's just the way that I am, or that's just the way that he is. Yeah, you were wired that way for sure, but you can change it with intentionality, which is what I did for me and my children, and how to handle things in a healthy manner, because that wasn't the situation for many, many years. And at some point, I was looking for support when I had left this relationship. I needed help big time. And I'm a big like support girl kind of the support group kind of person. Like I think that like strength in numbers, being with people in the same boat that you can help each other. I have twins. I was in a twin moms group when I was younger. I lived overseas. I was in an expat group. Like I just find that camaraderie with people in the same situation. So I had looked for a narcissistic support group, and there was nothing that I could find, at least in Charlotte. And so I squirreled that information away, and I said, well, when I'm in a better place, when I'm in a more healed space, I definitely want to start something for that, because I know that there is a need for this. It's very hidden. Most people who are in these kinds of relationships don't talk about it. They either not aware, or they're embarrassed, there's shame, they don't talk about it. But I knew that there was a need. So a few years later, I started a support group in Charlotte, first in person. And now it's been years now. I run virtual meetings. But my intention was it came from a very deep place in my heart, is that I was here. I was in this space, this awful, awful space, and I needed help. And most people around me didn't understand the deep level of the psychology of what was happening. And I wanted to create that space for others. So, which is what I've done, what I continue to do in offering a safe space. And the feedback I often get, the very similar feedback often is that, wow, I'm not alone. Like other people are experiencing this. Like most people think, oh, it's just my relationship, it's just my life. And it's like, no, like there are patterns. And like someone will speak and they're like, oh my gosh, that's exactly what's happening in my world. So creating that space, one, that then led into coaching because a lot of people in these support groups realize, oh, wow, like Deanna gets it. Like I'm not just reading from a book. I've lived this. I've lived this. And I somehow, by the grace of God, got to the other side. Well, I want to help other people in that recovery as well. So that then led into a coaching aspect of it. So massage, yes, I started with massage. That's where I was heading in my world. But the energy piece, the coaching, the supporting, all of that is a direct result of what happened in my personal world. Now I'll take it even further. Where I am with you today, gentlemen, right? Speaking on podcasts, I'm doing local speaking events. I'm speaking on raising awareness for healthy versus unhealthy relationships, red flags. Really, I want to hone in on even the younger generation like yourselves because you have longer life to live on this earth. And I wish I knew when I was in my 20s, what I know now. So it's okay. I want to help people learn that. And because I help people on the recovery side of getting out of these relationships and almost like helping them with the damage that has already ensued. I want to help people on the other side of that, like preventing to even get into these relationships. And then you don't have to do all the damage control after. So I talk about it as far as like medication versus supplements. I want to help on the preventative side. But none of that. And that's why I started with, I said, I could not be doing any of this work if I hadn't gone through what I went through. So there is a piece of gratitude. I describe my situation and my journey that I've been to hell and back, and I'm not exaggerating. However, the purpose that's come out of it, the suffering, has been beautiful. Not only have I come back to myself, that piece alone is a gift. I've rediscovered who I am, what I'm meant to do here in this world. But the people that I help, now it doesn't come from a place of ego. I'm genuinely so happy that I can help someone on their journey in some small capacity. And that brings me such joy.
I mean, very well said. Three quick things to mind, and then Matt, if you have a question or number one, you mentioned my generation, and then mentioned the 20s. I think Matt and I will accept the compliment. Uh, we've crossed the dark side of 30.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah, no, and I could just hear so much, I think, passion and in what you're speaking about, and I think it's always cool, I think, to have our guests speak to their story, their experiences, and time and time again, I think we are hosting these conversations that continue to provide evidence that you can really repurpose your darkest, most painful chapters of your life into
Yes.
purpose and direction. And so this is no different, only just unique to you. And yeah, it's really special to hear that passion come through in what you just described. Um, the last thing is I thought it was really awesome that uh, you pursued massage and then it just so happens to run parallel or be involved with a healing modality. And so being able to like fuse what you were doing into like I can help with holistic healing. And so maybe just speak to some of like your clients and where you find them, where they're at in their dark place. And
Right.
you've talked about people pleasing, you've talked about, I would imagine they're at their smallest because of how they've had to cater to the relationship dynamic or what that you've described from the narcissist side. um what are the traits? What are the qualities? What are the trends that you notice for your clients when they show up to you, and how do you get them back on their feet?
Yeah, it's a great question. So at this point of my life, I don't believe in coincidence. It's like everything, there's divine timing, there's divine things happening that we're so unaware of. But I started realizing in because I have my own private practice for massage and Reiki, and blended the two together for a beautiful. That's my signature session is a massage and Reiki session because it's just very powerful. You're approaching the body and you're also approaching the mind and the spirit. But I started recognizing that like all of the people, men and women, that were landing and ending up on my table, you know, a massage therapist is kind of like there's certain occupations like a hairdresser, a bartender, like people just kind of naturally unload and will share their experiences because you're an impartial, outsider, you don't know them, their family and all of that. So people typically will share really heavy stuff on my table. And I started recognizing a pattern that a lot of narcissistic relationships. Oh, my husband cheated on me. I found out he's a narcissist, this, that. And again, men and women, um, bosses, all forums. And I'm like, this cannot be a coincidence, right? These people are finding me. I don't typically do a whole lot of marketing. I'm out there, my website on Google, and I'm part of a networking group in Charlotte. But it's mind-boggling that all of the right people are just finding me. And I always say, like, wow, isn't that ironic? Because they could go to any massage therapist in Charlotte. There's many, right? But they find me. So I don't think that's a coincidence. And so, fine. Then you can have someone just say, "Oh, I just needed a massage, right? I just physically needed a massage." That's typically the gateway. People say, "Oh, yeah, I need the physical body work." Great. They start sharing their story, and it's like, "Oh, wow, yeah, I really could use help with the energy piece." Or, "Oh, wow, you run a support group? Oh, either me or someone I know. I need to let them know about that." Right? There's always these connections. So it either starts with someone who's coming in solely for a session, and then they start revealing more, or the opposite. I get many, many people too showing up to me in that very dark space of like their rock bottom. That has happened so many times where however they find me, they're in my studio and it's like they just kind of like empty what all this that's going on in their world. There's typically a narcissistic component to it. Um, and then I'm like, okay, what can we do to help? Energy healing helps on such a deeper level. Massage helps in many ways as well. Most people know what massage is. The energy piece, people are like a little leery of. But a lot of times when people come in that very desperate state, they're willing to try anything. They're like, whatever you need to do, I just need help. I'm overloaded in anxiety. I just feel like it happens all the time. Anxiety is a big one that people really struggle with because whatever's going on in their world, whatever is breaking down, they're trying to manage it on a physical level. And Reiki is very calming to the nervous system, which is helping you get out of that fight or flight, that survival mode. So yeah, I find it actually really still to this day, it's been years. I find it very interesting that the people that find me now, I kind of like smirk and laugh about it because it's like, yeah, that's awesome that you found me. This is wonderful. Um, and so, yeah, that's typically the clientele. There is that piece, and if the person that I'm helping doesn't have a situation with narcissism, they know somebody who does, and I hear that all the time. Oh my gosh, my friend is struggling with this. Oh, my sister, this that. So it's like then they send out my information to their family and friends as well.
Oh, excuse me.
Mhm.
Deanna, to wrap this up, what in life are you most proud of?
Oh, that's a great question. That's gonna get me a little emotional. I'm very proud of my healing journey and how wow. That was a great one. I'm so proud of how it has helped me help my children, my family, my friends, and all the clients and people that I help. I'm truly honored and humbled to do that. And that's why I say it's so opposite of the ego of the narcissist. It's that if I didn't have to keep my lights on, monetarily, financially, I would do it for free. I would just do it because I want to help people just get to a better place in their life and recognize their worth. We all have just special gifts to share. So yeah, you just got me all emotional, Matt. Wow.
It's supposed to be a
So,
good one, but no, thank you so much for your time, Deanna.
thank you guys so much. This was wonderful. I hope it